It's kind of wild, right? Like COVID was all over the news, and now it's like this weird background hum. Everyone's got a cough. People are still testing positive, but we're supposed to just act like it's all good. But is it really? Today, we are digging into that. We're looking at this Tyee article as COVID surges, the high price of viral denial, and some kind of scary stats from infectious disease expert Dr. Tara Moriarty.
What I find really interesting is how the article just comes right out and says, hey, this it's just a cold thing, maybe not so much, especially for us here in BC.
Yeah, this isn't some far off problem. This is us, our communities, everyone we know. And the Tyee doesn't hold back. They're saying COVID cases are up, it's more deadly than the flu, and all those mild infections, they could be causing serious problems down the line. Did any of that surprise you?
I think the big thing is how we used to see things. Like, remember cholera? Contaminated water. We didn't just say, oh, well, and let people get sick. We cleaned the water. This article is saying we need to think about the air we breathe the same way, especially indoors.
And it's not like it's just a tiny group of people this is affecting. They said 1 in 19 British Columbians has been infected. 1 in 19. That's a lot of people. This isn't a small thing.
And Dr. Moriarty's data backs that up. She estimates 1 million new COVID infections every single week just in Canada. That means over 1,000 deaths, way more than the official numbers, which we know are probably too low anyway.
That's a lot. It makes you wonder if we're even talking about this the right way anymore. If COVID is maybe the second or even the top cause of death in Canada right now, why isn't it the biggest story out there?
Well, it's got to be tough for officials to admit they were wrong, right? They downplayed COVID at first, so now it's hard to say, actually, it's worse than we thought.
But people need accurate information, you know? They need to be able to make smart choices about their health. And the Tyee doesn't sugarcoat it. They mention blood clots, brain damage, heart failure, even diabetes. These aren't small things, you know? It's easy to feel kind of helpless when you hear all this.
What we have to remember is we're learning more about this virus all the time, right? Like there was this study in Nature, and they found that the spike protein in the virus can actually stick to a blood protein called fibrin. And that can set off a chain reaction that leads to blood clots and inflammation, which might even be part of how the brain damage happens.
So it's not just about if you feel sick right now. It's the damage that could be happening that you don't even see every time you get infected.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot. It kind of makes you wonder, like, where do we go from here? What are we supposed to do with all this, you know?
Well, we can't freak out,
Yeah.
right? The first thing is we got to remember we can do stuff about this. We don't just have to give up. Like we wouldn't just let cholera hang out in our water. We can't just accept COVID in the air, right?
So being more proactive, like what? Wearing masks more, better ventilation.
Yeah, all that stuff we were doing back in 2021, it's even more important now that we know how bad the long-term effects can be. Think about it. What if we treated clean air like as important as clean water, like a basic right?
Yeah.
That means better ventilation in schools, workplaces, everywhere, really. And being cool with masks when it makes sense.
So it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about everyone, right? Especially people who are already more vulnerable.
100%. And we need everyone on board. Public health, the government, even bosses at work. They've got to be straight with people about the risks and get behind these solutions, not pretend it's not a big deal.
It's almost like we all need to change how we see this whole thing, right? It's not, is COVID over? It's, okay, this is still here. How do we live with it and keep each other safe?
Exactly. And we know way more now than we did back in the day. We're not starting from zero. We know what this thing is. We're figuring out how to deal with it.
It's good to remember that. It feels like a lot of this is out of our hands, but there are things we can control, you know? Taking care of ourselves, speaking up, all that.
Totally. Don't underestimate how powerful that is. Staying informed, asking questions, and making your voice heard. Talk to your doctor. Bug your boss about ventilation. Support researchers who are trying to figure this thing out. Every little bit helps.
Man, this article from the Tyee did not mess around. It's definitely made me think about COVID in a whole new way.
And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
We want people to learn something new, and then we want them to do something with what they learned.
Okay, so to sum it all up, just because COVID isn't on the front page anymore doesn't mean it's gone. Don't be fooled, stay in the know, look after yourselves and each other, and don't be afraid to ask questions. That's how we figured this whole thing out. It's kind of scary, honestly. It makes you wonder, like, is this just how it is now? Are we stuck with this?
I don't think so. I mean, one thing the Tyee article doesn't really get into is solutions. They lay out the problem, but they don't offer much hope, you know?
Yeah, they kind of leave you hanging like, okay, so what now?
Right. But I don't think it's hopeless. I mean, We got to start by remembering this isn't inevitable. It's not like the weather. We can actually do stuff about it.
So it's not just about being scared. It's about like, okay, what can we actually do?
Totally. And honestly, the solutions haven't really changed that much. It's still about clean air, right? Like, think about it. We all know how to make water safe. Air is kind of the same deal. We just have to treat it that way.
You mean like taking ventilation seriously? And masks, are those still important?
100%. Especially now that we know how risky these repeat infections are. Imagine if we just decided, you know what? Clean air. That's just like clean water. That changed things. Better ventilation everywhere. Maybe masks aren't so weird anymore, you know?
Yeah, it's like our responsibility isn't just to ourselves, it's to everyone around us too.
Exactly. And that means being honest with each other. No more downplaying, right? Public health, politicians, everyone's got to be straight up about the risks and what works to stay safe.
No more pretending it's not a big deal just because it's easier.
Right. We're past that now, you know. We've learned too much.
Okay, so we just keep asking questions like, what else can we do?
Asking questions is huge. Don't be afraid to bug your doctor about long COVID. If the ventilation at your work sucks, say something.
Mm-hmm.
And support the people who are trying to figure all this out, you know, the researchers. Every little bit helps.
So it's not just about today. It's about, like, the big picture.
Exactly. How do we want to live with this thing long term? Because it's not going anywhere.
Well, this has been a lot. This Tyee article really made me rethink some things.
A lot to process, for sure.
Okay, so if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that COVID might be old news, but it's not gone. Stay informed, stay safe, and keep asking those tough questions. That's all we've got, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself.